Yes, I know all of the things.
I don't know. Some of your background makes me think you might have been a spy.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah.
Because you worked in arts, and then you're like, yeah. Then I went to China.
And those two things naturally go together
Yeah,
without any
always-
secret cover story.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's a bit sus. That's what the real reason you got me back on the podcast is I think she's a secret spy.
I'm gonna out her.
I think
See
she's
what
a
we can
double
find
agent.
out.
She's a double. Welcome back, everyone, to the Chip Lunch Podcast. And guess what? We're back. That lady. That lady Jen.
No, it was supposed to be, that lady.
Oh, my gosh. This lady.
Her style of presentation is so off-putting. Do you know what's really funny? A friend of mine listened to the audio version, and I won't take that personally, that he could only listen to my voice. But then his feedback was...
Wow.
It's all right. He knows who he is. And I literally said, thanks for watching. And he went, no, I listened to the audio version. I went, whoa, you really needed to spell that out to me. Anyway, he knows who he is. He then said, but the nice thing he said was, I find your style of presentation not off-putting.
Yeah,
I agree.
Which is really nice, considering I'm still holding on to that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Can you let go now? It's like a full circle moment.
Oh, now that you've
you've
processed
just
it.
Nah,
let it go.
I should.
Jeez.
This is the real reason I come on the podcast.
Wow. That was a long time ago, too.
It really was.
And it was the only bad comment, wasn't it, when you were teaching?
Oh, I'd have one bad comment each semester, but that's the one that kills me.
Yeah.
find her
And is that because you put so much effort into not being boring?
Well, there's a very funny story about me being boring. Do you want me to?
Sure.
Yeah, right. Jen, this is
Bore
Jen,
us with it.
This is Jen runs the podcast. Oh, come on.
We'll tell you if you're boring.
Yeah. So my first year SRE teaching is back in the dark ages before you did any training, which is 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And 20 years ago I was 21. So do the maths, 41, looking good.
Quick maths.
Had the grace. I didn't do any training. I think I watched one person's class. Then I was given the manual.
Yeah.
And it's off you go, teach these year one kids the Bible. And I'm like, okay. And I had no idea. I had a bit of kids ministry experience, but really not a very confident person. And so I would sit there and I would read the manual like this every week.
I find that surprising for you.
Okay. So it was just where I was at 20 years ago.
Okay.
Hard to imagine. And so a little kid puts up her hand, throughout the class, and I'm like, oh, she's got a great question. She's learning about Jesus. She's going to ask me this great stuff. Okay. And she says, Mrs. Phillips. I'm like, yeah, what is that? She's like, you're boring. Yeah. And then I told that story to a friend of mine years later, and he's seen me teach scripture since, and he's like, so now you're overcompensating for that one?
Oh.
And so,
Wow.
yeah. Hence
Can't win either way.
Jen isn't boring. Oh, no, it's
Yeah.
fine. Not off-putting is what
Seems like a lot of questions. You called into question a lot about your presentation style. Is that just because of the different things that you've done over the years?
That people called it into question, or I call my own into question?
Maybe a bit of both. I suppose.
I think it comes back to like we were talking about last time. I filter out all the positive and I hear all the negative. So even if I could mine a comment for the most negative, like my friend was just trying to encourage me. He's like, oh, you're overcompensating. He's trying to say, I've seen you teach, Jen. You are the opposite of boring. And I'm like, he says I'm way too intense.
Yeah.
You know what? And like that entirely was not what he was meaning to say.
Yeah, but that's what you sometimes hear.
Oh yeah, I'll mine it for the negative nuggets.
A negative miner.
Yeah, that's me.
Well, we have to be careful then. Don't say anything negative or even sarcastically negative. I know that'll be hard for you, Braden.
Like sarcastic.
Yeah. You're a sarcasm machine.
It's the pot calling the kettle black.
It's the couch of sarcasm.
Yeah. Salubrious couch of sarcasm.
I was like sarcasm. I
Oh,
don't know how to put it in there without it
sarcasm.
sounding.
Sarcasm.
I will survive.
Yeah.
Okay.
if you inadvertently throw some shade in my direction.
Well, you said that you prefaced before we sat down that you have a hot take on hot chips.
I have a hot take on hot chips.
Yes.
Are you ready for it?
Well, yes. Be ready for our negative reaction.
Oh no, it is no. I'm prepared.
Okay.
This may be the most controversial thing that's ever been shared.
I don't know. We'll see.
Lunch
We'll
podcast.
see.
Off the
It's
press.
episode 127 here. We'll see.
We've heard a lot.
About a few weirdos.
Get the phone out just in case.
Recording.
So, we're talking about last time, like past chips, but then I was thinking, what's my go-to chip today?
Yes.
Like if I'm to walk into a chip selling establishment and
A CSC, as we know them as.
see how I talk really normally, like a normal person, not like a secret spy. And so when I walk into a chip selling establishment, friends who know me well know that the way to my heart is grilled burgers, and so
I was in grilled. Like
grilled the company, the
burger selling establishment.
The BSB, BSE.
BSE.
Oh, yeah, no, in my home language it's a B.
It's a burger selling burgers.
And so I love grilled burgers.
The people selling burgers are actually burgers. They're dressed up as burgers.
There's burgers behind the counter.
Welcome to grilled.
And the poor things, they know we're going to eat their siblings.
But they can't.
Jeez, wow, that took a dark turn.
They can't touch they can't make the burgers easily because the bun just
Went
gets
from
in the
like
way.
child book to like horror novel really
Straight
quickly.
away, raw, man, we got there,
It's
didn't we?
Sorry, you love going to
I
grilled.
did.
Whimsical and fun.
Now we've got
horrendously
burgers selling burger cannibalism,
Yeah.
and and so like it used to be a joke with the team at YouthWorks. On Mondays we would all go out for lunch together, and we could never decide, and we're all standing around, just out, where are we going to go? I'm like, grilled burgers. I hear grilled burgers is good. What do you think about grilled burgers? And it started just as a joke. And then everyone's like, Jen really loves grilled burgers. And then it's like, let's go somewhere that's not grilled burgers, Jen. But it was like this joke that we would have on our team. So my team knows. So when I turned 40, I was at an SRE conference, I think the next day, and they ordered in grilled burgers for me because they love me, and that's the way to my heart. Yeah. But anyway, I walk into a burger selling establishment and I go, you know what chips I'm going to have? Zucchini.
Oh, you go to the
Zucchini chips, and that's what I thought. That's my go-to chip, and I went, I wonder if there's anyone in the history of this podcast who would rate zucchini chips.
I don't think so.
That's my hot take.
Anyone said that, have they?
No.
Are they even real hot chips? That's the thing. They don't have potato in it.
What is the definition of a
Yeah, we
chip?
need
Does
to
it have to be potato,
It's
or is it the shape? Is it that it was fried? Like we're really getting really deep and existential about chips now, but they call them chips.
I guess potato chips would mean that there's other types of chips, but like we don't call potato chip like hot chips potato chips. Do we? It's not like the crisps. Chips kind of English definition.
Oh yes, what's a crisp and what's a chip?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was my hot take. Is
Zucchini.
I am out and proud with my love of zucchini chips.
I don't like them that much. I want to like them, but I don't like them that much when I eat them.
I don't know. Like it's the same as sweet potato. Like it's good, it's fun, but I'm not going to pick it over the original.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Careful, you said something negative.
I knew they wouldn't understand me. Yes, it's fine. Yes, anyway.
What sauce do you have from grilled with it?
Oh, what's the one? I want to say dill. It's got the dill in it. You're looking at me like you are the weirdest person in the world.
No, I was trying to make a joke about you being a dill.
You're a dill.
But what else is it? It's dill and something else. I can't even remember because I don't get it. But
yes, I don't know what the other thing is, but that is my go-to. But and it's a rare treat because the burger my husband always gets has that on it, and so he doesn't want double dill.
Yeah. no one wants
for double dill.
Already live with enough dills.
Double dill.
I live with my wife; she's a big deal, and so he'll get the chipotle, and I'm like, this is okay, this is no deal. And so if I'm on my own and I get the deal, it's like super special treat.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Can I ask you about that pronunciation of
Chipotle?
I thought it was Chipotle.
It probably is. I probably said it wrong.
No, I'm genuinely asking. Is that because I don't know?
No,
Because I think it's good. Like
I can't find anything with dill. Herbed mayo, sweet chili mayo.
Oh, there's a
tomato
picture of Jen.
relish, Chipotle.
Oh, it must be herb mayo.
Oh, the herb mayo. Yes, I know herb mayo.
Maybe I thought
Maybe it
it
has
was
dill in it.
dill in the herb mayo. Maybe I'm making things up. Or maybe I'm in a parallel dimension where in my dimension, grilled burgers has dill. But I have woken up this morning in the just everything is exactly the same, except grilled burgers has a different name for its mayo. Have you not? You're looking at me like I'm bored.
No.
Looking at me like I'm the crazy one here.
Well, clearly this is a really normal thing to say out loud, right? And I had an experience. I went to America when I was 16 with my mum for like 10 days, and then I came back, and the building across the road from Engadine Station was a different colour. Now, obviously, a normal person would say it was painted, and it just so happened to have been painted in that time, those 10 days I was in America.
Which building though? The building that's that brick building, or it's like the actual commercial?
It's a commercial building.
The one that's behind the ramp.
Behind the ramp,
Yeah,
yes.
okay,
I
yep.
think it was.
It's
now,
now called like Hot and Cold or something.
I've got to admit something that's a bit interesting. I have mild aphantasia.
Hang on a second. The Disney show?
Yeah, I was like, Anastasia is
Anastasia and
interesting-
Fantasia,
and Fantasia.
put together.
what's the one with the Russian? Is that Anastasia?
It's no Disney. Don't you dare
it's
cross
Disney,
the streams.
isn't it?
No, we would know
What are
what's a
you
real
talking about?
Disney and what's a not. No,
Well,
that's
no,
a
the
Fox.
old one.
That's not Anastasia. Wasn't made by Disney.
okay.
Don't you dare.
I
Don't
don't
you
know,
even.
man. What do you mean, don't you even?
Oh, because
What
we
is
worked
this?
in DVDs and we know what's a Disney and what's a not, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I was
I
the
feel like-
manager and you were the weekend casual.
Wow. That's true though. Yeah,
It is
was.
accurate.
It
Plus
is
I was
accurate.
older.
I did Thursday nights too, by the
I
way.
don't
but-
think I've
Oh yes, forgot about the Thursday nights. You know why I'd forget? Because I'd be like, 5 o'clock, I'm
Time
out of
for me to
here,
go.
mic drop,
Yeah.
off you
That did
go.
happen.
Have fun with that.
Thursday
The,
night team. I have mild aphantasia,
Which is what? Sorry.
which is, so my mind's eye isn't very clear. And so when you
Oh.
picture things in your brain,
Yeah.
like my husband's at the complete other end of the spectrum where he can create whole movies in his head.
Yeah.
And so another friend of mine who was an avid reader, he reads very slowly because he's building a whole movie as he's reading the book. Whereas I can race through books because I'm not picturing. I'm picturing my mind's eye is very. It's like a fisheye, so it's quite. Like grey on the outside. Like I can
like
just
zoomed
focus,
in but fuzzy
really
around the
zoomed
edge.
in. And for the point of this story, I can't remember colours. So I was going to say the building in Engadine was blue once and now it's yellow, or it was yellow once and now it's blue. And I actually would have to drive past that building in Engadine because I don't remember colour. And so I'll have to drive past it next time and make a note for my third visit on the podcast and be like, hey guys, I'm here.
Yeah.
Here's my hot take. That building in Engadine that I think changed colour because I slid into another dimension when I came back from America.
Wow.
It's either blue or yellow. But whatever it was, I changed dimensions or they painted it while I was in America.
Okay.
One or the other.
Either way. I don't even know why we're talking about this. Oh, because I woke up in the new dimension where there's no dill mayo at
dill
Grill
mayo.
Burgers.
Wait, how do you say aphantasia? Sorry.
Aphantasia.
Aphantasia.
Yeah, so as in, so real aphantasia, full aphantasia is you have no mind's eye at all. There is no picture in your brain. So there are people, and they're actually doing research on these people because they think that they might be able to help people who have PTSD flashbacks, whatever the process is in an aphantasia brain, would be able to, if they could stimulate that in the brain of someone with PTSD, then they were not going to be picturing traumatic flashbacks. So they're doing lots of research pardon me, on aphantasia right now. And so, a real full aphantasia has cannot picture anything in their brain. And I'm not like that. But I like all the time my husband and I joke because I will say, yeah, can you get me that green pen? And he's like, that pen is not green. I'm like, well, my brain thinks it's green. He's like, no, you're remembering it wrong. Like I remember colour wrong because that whole part of my processing isn't there.
Interesting.
Which is to say maybe the building never changed colour at all.
Oh, goodness me.
Yes.
You just remembered that it was wow.
Now I understand the new dimension thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't even there. Was the building even there?
Is the building there?
Does the train station exist?
I do believe there's a train station.
I have
in
got off that
Engadine.
train station a number of times.
Oh, yes. Well, I used to live in Engadine. So I did a lot of I lived in Engadine. We moved when I was in year 8. And I had committed to my church and I'd got a good group of friends at Janelli High. So I was getting the train back and forth from Engadine to Janelli for like a big chunk of high school. So when I run into people and they're like, oh, I grew up in Engadine. I'm like, yeah, I kind of did. Yeah. I mean, I slept there.
Engadine Station's weird because if you're going south, you've got to go over a bridge and then under a tunnel to get underneath the highway.
Yeah. It's a journey.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
And you remember way more about.
So you are not a
me. I'm sitting in the window going singing a song in my head.
What song?
Did you ever do the when you got your P's for the first time and it was like, cool, I need to go to this place that I've gone 100 million billion times in my entire life. How do I get it? I did that. It was like, I've been zoning out in the car my entire life. How do I get to my auntie's house?
Oh, no. No.
Okay.
No, we didn't zone out.
No, that was...
But like I'm old enough, admitting my age. Oh, I already did. I said I'm 41. When I started driving, I had to have the Gregories out. You looking at me blank.
Street directory.
The Gregories. Yes.
I don't know what it's called, but we had
There's a guy called Greg.
Yes. And you're like, Gregories, but you needed more than one Greg to help you get there.
Would every car had a Greg?
Gregories.
I'd like to buy a Gregory, please.
And they live under your seat, these little guys. This little gnome pops out.
Turn left here.
Mate, you should go Captain Cook. You shouldn't go Tom Uglies, mate.
Thanks, Greg.
No, I've
it's Gregory?
never had that problem.
No?
I have I reckon one of my skills is almost a photographic memory to get anywhere.
Places.
Wow.
Oh, that is handy.
Yeah, that is very
There
handy.
you go. Well, when I was at uni, I was a debating adjudicator. So I drove all around Sydney, but no GPS, right? So I'd have to have the Gregories, and then I'd also have all these kind of cross streets listed on a piece of paper so I'd know. And there'd be times that I'd be like, oh, I don't know where I am. So I'd pull off to a side street and then kind of calibrate where I was. I mean, it's a different world.
Yeah.
I do remember when I used to work at an Audi dealership, driving cars
Which
around
was your
stuff.
job after Easy DVD?
Correct.
Because I thought you said you were going to Aldi. And I went, why is Joel leaving us to work at Aldi?
So many people did that. I actually worked both places for quite a while.
Yeah, right.
But I had to drive to Palm Beach, and I'd never been there before.
Oh, no, that is a long way away.
So I had to drive a car there to pick up a customer and bring them back. And I had the Gregories.
Oh, yeah.
Gregory was with me the whole trip.
Hi, Joel. How are you going?
But yeah, I remember that because that was GPS wasn't really much of a thing.
No, not even then.
Or you'd usually have you had it in the car, but it wasn't very accurate. So everyone had those external ones that they would put in the car.
Oh, yes.
Navman.
Yes.
Yeah, like a Navman or something, or a Garmin.
Garmin? Was it Garmin?
Yep.
Wow.
Garmin, who do watches, originally did GPS.
Yeah, I think they did things before GPS systems as well, but because Garmin is they use GPS for different things.
It just blows my
For their
mind that they
products.
do anything other than watches.
Oh, really?
Is that a really silly thing to think? Apple, they do things other than watches. No.
The thing I remembered about how I was going to start this podcast. even though we have started this.
It's good because we can edit out all of this stuff beforehand. This Jenn faffing about.
Champagne podcasting.
Yes.
That's what I was going to say.
Every once in a while,
Yeah,
Joel.
that's right. Champagne podcasting.
Yes.
Should we actually talk about your life? Well, we have been. Well, we did touch on a few things, didn't we?
Yeah, like that time I thought I slid into an alternate dimension.
Yeah.
Twice.
Well, let's slide into another alternate dimension.
Yeah.
I think we wrapped up the last episode with you finishing or coming close to the end of uni.
Uni. Well, that's a funny story about uni because I have 5 university degrees. Yeah, you
All right,
laugh
let's run them off first of all.
Oh, okay. So I have a Bachelor of Creative Arts in Creative Writing, and then I have a Master's in English Literature by coursework, and then I have a PhD in English Literature. This is all in chronological order. Okay. Then I have a Master of Teaching in high school English and Studies of Religion. And then I actually technically had to surrender. This sounds really dodgy. I just surrendered my theology degree recently. Not because of any reason, not because of any heresy.
Controversial.
No, yeah, but because I had a graduate diploma in divinity, which is the first year of a master's I did through SMBC, and I'm trading that in to do a second year through YouthWorks College. And so in order to trade in your credits, you have to like shred the original degree.
We have the shredder here.
So here we are.
To put it on the altar.
Burning coals, and it's a fragrant offering to the Lord.
Oh, you actually set it on fire. Shred it and then set it on fire.
Yeah, and do a little dance. And so I actually misspoke then. I have almost 5 degrees.
Wow.
I had 5.
Yes, well, I'm chipping away at my 5th. Yes. So my HECS debt, I haven't
I was
quite.
about to say, like, at least you finished them. I had a friend who, we called him a hex collector because he just kept stopping and starting and stopping and
Best
starting
name
and stopping and
ever.
What a
starting.
hex collector.
That's the
Like,
best.
what's
name
Blah?
ever.
What's Blah do? Oh, he's a hex collector.
Yeah. So I haven't quite hit the $100,000 limit because my first degree, my first degree was only $3,000, and it's a couple of things. It's 2001. It was cheaper then. I think it was like $300 a subject. In 2001, but also it was that cheap because it was a creative arts degree in creative writing, and they went, we're not going to make people pay thousands of dollars for this. all they're good for is working at Easy DVD. So I was at uni. We were talking about uni.
However, you know, I do not have a creative arts degree. I have a Bachelor of Business and Commerce.
See, and you did more things than work at Easy DVD.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
That's the difference between you working there on the weekends and me being the manager. Right?
She the manager.
Yeah, just, they call me Mrs. Manager. And well, Dr. Manager. Oh, that would be,
Doctor manager.
So the reason I've got a teaching degree is I'd got the PhD and was not confident of my ability to get a job as an English literatures lecturer. And so I went, my pride feeds into a lot of this. Got a PhD, so enrolled in law so people would know I'm smart, dropped out of law. People won't know I'm smart. So enrolled in a master's so people would know I'm smart. And then I'm like, this is useless. So then I did a PhD so people would know I'm smart. But also because I really like teaching and I thought, I don't think I could teach high school. God, is hilarious because then I ended up getting a high school teaching degree. But that was so that I didn't have a PhD and have no other option for work except stocking shelves. Or going back to probably not Easy DVD, they'd collapsed by then. So when we were working together, it was 2004, I'd gone back to do my master's, and I thought, like, I kind of joke, it's all about pride and wanting people to know I'm smart. And on one, that is true. On the flip side, I thought, I'd been at uni and I was sick of being in tutes where, particularly in the humanities, where the tutor just leads the Christian bashing. Yeah. And this is like, we're talking about 2001 to 2004, I did my undergrad, and it was already palpable, the anti-Christian rhetoric that would happen in humanities faculties, because the universities are always before culture. So, like, here's an example of the universities being before culture. When I did my undergrad in the arts building at Wollongong Uni, there was one gender-neutral toilet. By the time I was doing my PhD, they had put signs up in every toilet in the arts building saying, you do not have the right to question the identity of the gender of the people in this toilet. And that I did my PhD, I finished in 2011. So that's a fair way before culture. So the unis are well before culture. So I remember being in tutes and the Christians were being ripped into. I remember one in particular where the guy was right in terms of he was reading, there's a passage in a James Joyce novel. I want to say it's not Finnegan's Wake. James Joyce didn't write that many, and it's not Ulysses. Anyway, it's one. My memory is failing me, but there's a passage where a character in a literary novel is close to becoming a Christian. Yeah. And so what had happened was in the university copy of this novel, someone had annotated when the guy he's reading about to become a Christian and then makes the decision at the end not to, and someone had annotated in the margins, no, like in big, like had written like a visceral reaction.
Right.
And so the guy talking about this in our shoot is like, oh, how silly is this Christian that they are so offended by this person not becoming a Christian, but also think it's okay to graffiti library books. And then everyone's laughing, oh, stupid Christians, right?
Oh, I was taking it as like, no, don't become a Christian.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Oh,
too.
no, it's when the guy,
Okay.
The character chooses not to become a Christian, and the poor Christian reader is so upset for them that they picked up a pen and went, I know what I'll do. I'll have my own reaction to this in the margins. And then here I am, you know, with a colleague. Like, he wasn't one of the lecturers, but the lecturer let it happen, right? And so then we just had 20 minutes of Christian bashing for no particular reason. Had nothing to do with modernist texts at all, from what I could tell. And I remember going up to this guy later and saying, if I was of another faith background, I could actually feel pretty vilified by what you said, but because I'm a Christian, I just got to sit there. And it was a really interesting kind of conversation and he was like, oh yeah, well, blah, blah, blah. And he kind of justified himself away. But that kind of stuck in my head, and I went, if I was a lecturer, I wouldn't, you know, number one, I'd let people know I'm a Christian. Number two, there would be no Christian bashing in my shoots. Like, it's just not going to happen. Yeah. And there could actually be a space where Christianity and academia and humanities could work well together.
Yeah.
And so that, you know, I say I did the masters because I want people to know I'm smart, but also I did see it as a potential ministry in terms of being a Christian in an academic world. And there's one of my law lecturers actually is a wife of a minister down south, and she's still at Wollongong Uni. And she was a bit of she really stood out to me. I knew she'd gone to my church. I knew she was a Christian. I knew she was in academia, and I thought, okay, this could work. Right. And so part of getting the PhD was hoping to be a Christian in a non-Christian space. Yeah. Kind of didn't do a great job in that, in so much as my PhD is on Bret Easton Ellis and Chuck Palahniuk. These are bad guys. Joel's pulling a face like... No.
That's Fight Club, and Chuck Palahniuk wrote Fight Club.
Chuck Palahniuk wrote Fight Club. Bret Easton Ellis wrote American Psycho.
Yeah.
I, as a 25-year-old, thought, I can read these really gross, violent, misogynistic texts, and it's not going to affect me as a Christian. I'll be fine. Yeah. It was hard. Like, when I wrote my chapter on American Psycho, like, there's some pretty confronting stuff in that book. I wouldn't encourage any Christian person to read that book, although, you know, there is a record of me having spent, I wrote 20,000 words on that book.
Wow.
I justified it to myself by saying, well, the passages where he does really gross stuff, like he's a psychopath, he's a murderer, are all in his head. Mm-hmm. And so it's not actually a book glorifying someone who is killing people. It is a book that is saying this person is not coping with what it means to be a man in America. And so in doing so, he's unreliably narrating himself doing these bad things. Yeah. So the whole thesis was about unreliable first-person narrators. So you read a book, or to spoil Fight Club, guys.
Mm-mm. Oh, no.
Put time codes below if you don't want a movie from 1999 spoiled for you. Yeah, no, we're not doing that. So the book of Fight Club, which is very similar to the movie, is told from Ed Norton's character's perspective, who doesn't have a name. So I just call him the narrator. I do this. I have this really boring life. I buy lots of IKEA furniture. Oh, I met this guy called Tyler Durden. He's really interesting. He's definitely not me. Blah, 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 blah. Oops, sorry. Tyler Durden is my split personality, right? And so Ed Norton led you to believe that he and Tyler Durden were the one person. So novels where the narrator is deliberately misleading you about an aspect. And so Bret Easton Ellis and Chuck Palahniuk, they kept using this technique in multiple iterations, like different ways. There's lots of different ways. So Bret Easton Ellis has a novel with multiple narrators, and you kind of go, this narrator contradicted that narrator. What's going on here? Kind of stuff like that. And then Chuck Palahniuk went, hold my beer, I'll have a novel with 120 narrators. And so I was kind of thinking that I can be a Christian and fill my mind with some of this really not great stuff, and it won't affect me. I would go back in time to my younger self and go, you idiot, let's do something better than this. But the flip side of that is I haven't run a shoot at Wollongong Uni since 2014. But I used to feel confident and comfortable to be able to introduce my first tute every semester by saying, and this is my little spiel that I would use, we all have different worldviews that we come and experiences that influence how we read the text. That's why I love reading in a group of 20 people, because you're going to find something that I don't find, and I'd love to hear what you've got. For instance, I am a Bible-believing Christian, and so I'm going to read Christian allegory in texts because that's my background. But you might have a different faith background, and you might see things that I completely am not going to miss. And so that's kind of my safe way of introducing it. And maybe I had one woman who ended up working at the Rationalist Society later who didn't like me and was out to get me from that point. But every other student was like, whatever. But the Christians were like, oh my goodness, it's a Christian tutor in humanities. And I probably met, I've got a friend who now works for Quizworks, and his wife and a friend of theirs who've then subsequently come up to me there in ministry. They're like, oh, we remember when you tutored us. I was out at Denham Court, meeting some people down there for my job, and turns out his son, who's a Christian at Moore College now, and I lectured him. And they're not all in ministry because I lectured them, but God was really kind that did become a bit of a ministry. And I probably 20 people have come up to me, or I've crossed paths with them subsequently. You know, I probably taught 500, 600 students over those few years. And quite a lot of them said, thank you. You were the one Christian I had in my arts degree. So that was really cool. That was a really great opportunity to have a different ministry, if that made sense. But I think, did I talk about I think I did on the last podcast talk about my, it's not a Damascus Road moment. It's what's the F6 freeway moment? Is it the F6 freeway going down to Wollongong? What do we call it? Yeah. When I was working in paid high school SRE, and I was filling in for a lecturer, and they happened to clash on the same day. And I went, why am I doing both? You know, why don't I teach God's word? And so that was kind of the beginnings of God going, yeah, you could do this. You could be an academic, but these books aren't going to change people's lives like God's word is. And so, so that was while doing my PhD. So I was doing my PhD, finished in, I've got a photo. It comes up every year on 2 weeks before June 8. Why am I saying it like that? Because I handed in my PhD 2 weeks before my son was born. So I have a photo of me very pregnant, like about to pop, handing in my PhD for marking. And he was late. So I think I gave myself a generous 9 days between finishing my PhD and my due date. Turns out he was late, so it worked out. Yeah. Okay. So so that was the PhD years. I'm so like Taylor Swift. I'm really not like Taylor Swift. Sorry.
Where does the China part fit in?
How does China fit in? Okay, so God is hilarious.
The China years.
I did. God, again, is hilarious. So very funny story about my husband asking me out.
Well, I was about to jump back later because I'm like, we've mentioned him, but
how does he fit in?
To kids, but
So my husband and I were both at Janelli Anglican. We're still there.
This is Dave.
Dave, the shift worker, the nondescript shift worker.
Yeah, I wasn't calling him that.
No, but
a bit like Gregory's.
If you know, you know. Yeah. And so he wasn't a nondescript shift worker then. He was a draftsman, and I knew him. He's a man of multiple names. Okay. He's because our surname is Phillips. And then they, comes from, you're playing on the soccer field at lunchtime at school, and so, hey, Phillips, pass the ball. Oh, Phillipsy. Dilpsy. Somehow it turned into Dilpsy. Your eyes are like, what is
Dilpsy,
that?
Wow.
Dilpsy is, lots of people know Dilpsy. Then it turned to Dipper. So he's a man of many names. So Dilpsy Dipper was known to me.
Dipper sounds like a AFL player.
Well, it was after Dipper Domenico. It was. Yeah, it was a mate, David's friend, Dale, went, you know what? Dipper. Dipper Domenico, yeah, those people back in the 90s. And my first memory of my husband, I credit my good friend Cameron Hislop, the youth minister at Jenelli Anglican, for this. Cameron's always like, when you go on a podcast, Jen, stop saying my name. I'm like, well, stop being such a part of my life, and then I'll stop saying your name.
Yeah,
so no, Cameron.
Don't work so hard.
Yet again, featuring in key moments in my life. He was the person who greeted me when I first walked in the door at Jenelli Anglican when I was 10. And when David's 3 years older than me, and when he was in year 12, there was a school magazine, like a yearbook, Jenelli High yearbook, and it was really anti-Christian. It just so happened that whoever was on the magazine committee that year were just really not enjoying the Christians at Jenelli. Yeah. And there were lots, like I told you, like my year had like, I reckon 50, 60, 70 kids regularly going to 2 different local youth groups. So there was a big movement in the 90s for youth groups at Jenelli High. And so they'd written things like what's hot, what's not, what's not is like the year 8, 9 youth group. There was a couple of other things in there, but one was particularly bad where there was a boy in David's year who said his aim in life was to burn down Jenelli Anglican Church, especially the senior high youth group.
Wow.
And they let that through. Like, could you imagine if it was another faith? Like, that is just, but this is the world, 1997. But my husband's yearbook thing was to get back at that guy. So his aim in life was to get back as a party for burning down Jenelli Church, right? And so the reason I know all this, I mean, I had the yearbook myself, but the reason I know is because Cameron got up at our youth church and talked about, if the world hates you, they hated him first. They hated Christ first. You guys are standing out. He was kind of geeing up the troops. Like, you guys are standing out and people are noticing, and don't be surprised. And so he kind of did this whole spiel on that. And kind of an encouragement to the people. But he ended by saying, and don't worry, because if anything happens to our church, Dave Phillips is going to get as a party back. And that's how he ended it, right? And it was just kind of this thing to kind of encourage my husband too for being bold as a Christian. And that was the first memory I have of my husband, is not my husband, but Cameron saying this guy Dave Phillips he's gonna fight for us. And so anyway, so David and I kind of cross paths, but he's a few years older, so he's kind of youth leading and I'm still in youth. And we're at a house party and I'm probably first or second year out of school, and we're chatting, and he'd heard some things about this Jen Clark person and he thought, she's kind of interesting. I'm like, yeah, interesting's a word for it. No. And so we're chatting for a couple of hours at this house party, and he kind of already decided she's pretty cool. Maybe I could marry her. And I'm like, nice. I don't really know this David Phillips guy, apart from he doesn't like arsonists. So, he's the one for me.
Start.
Yeah.
Not a red flag.
Yeah.
But I'm happy. Yeah. So then he tried to let me know he was interested by saying any woman that I would marry would have to be willing to go to Africa to serve Jesus, like that kind of level of, so do you want to come to Africa with me, is what he said.
Wow.
And I didn't get it because I had no self-esteem and I didn't think this wonderful guy would be interested in me. I didn't know he was propositioning me. So it took another kind of 18 months for me to realise, or maybe it wasn't 18 months, but it was...
It's like Pride and Prejudice. He was not propositioning me.
No. Well, it gets worse then, because then he gave me his old, this is the way to my heart, grilled burgers and Sega Mega Drives. He gave me his old Sega Mega Drive for my birthday one year, because apparently he was driving around with it in his boot, didn't know what to do with it. He made this bow.
I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. Someone had gone, generally like Sonic the Hedgehog, which I did. And he made this bow out of duct tape as well. He stuck it on the top. And he's really cute. He's a quirky fella. And he gave it to me on my birthday at church. And I'm like, okay, that's nice. And so then I emailed, because we weren't even texting, I emailed his work address, I think, even. And I said something, because I was studying law at the time. I just didn't want to be too out there. I like, thank you. I had a great day, remembering my old, games from when I was a kid. If you ever want visitation rights, you're welcome, right? And I'm like, come to my house, play Sega games with me, David. And he didn't reply to the email at all. And I'm like, oh, ouch. So anyway, it's a bit of these. It is a little bit Pride and Prejudice, but eventually we get together. and get married very young, like I was 20. But the plan was to be missionaries. We were going to be missionaries. But like I said in the last podcast, I was diagnosed with depression at 19, not long after we got engaged. And they're not linked. I think it's like, I'm so sad I'm getting married. It just so happened that I got diagnosed with depression. And I went, well, I'm never going to be able to be a missionary if I have a mental health issue. That was just what I thought. And so we kind of shelved that and just did life. And, you know, I finished my degree. David was drafting and eventually decided to change careers, and we ended up living somewhere. I'm being deliberately vague. Living somewhere so he could train for that career. And that was while I was still doing my PhD. And we really struggled to have children. Our boys are both IVF. Max, my eldest, was actually relatively easy in terms of IVF. So we had 1 month of treatment and that nothing came of that. And then the second month of treatment, too much came of it. Like IVF works, not to get too graphic, but they try to get as many eggs out of the woman as possible. Usually maybe 1 or 2 eggs come out. They give you hormones to stimulate more eggs. The month before that failed, they stimulated only 2 eggs. So I was injecting myself with hormones every day and got as much as a normal woman could. Next month, they kind of overcompensated and I got 22 eggs, which is horrific for your body, and I had lots of side effects. But only one of those 22 became a child, and that was Max. And he was the first embryo we'd ever had transferred. So I just assumed all you need is an embryo and you have a baby. And so this is all happening while I'm trying to finish my PhD as well. It was pretty. So actually my husband was training for his new career. We were living away from the Shire. We were not regularly going to church apart from when I'd visit back to the Shire for that kind of 9-month period, and I was undergoing hormone treatment and trying to fall pregnant. So that was pretty huge. And so had Max, and then I thought, we need another embryo and we'll have a baby. And I wanted our kids really close together. My brothers and I are far apart. Like Adam and I are 4.5 years apart, and then Matt is another 4 years on top of that. So I joke, Matt's about to turn 50, and so I joked at his 40th, no matter how old you get, Matt, I'm always going to be almost a decade younger. And so that works really well for me, and he doesn't like that. And so I really wanted my kids close together. Max was 6 months old when we went back for more IVF, and turns out God had a different plan, and we ended up having 5 embryos miscarry between Max and Oliver. Max and Oliver are 3 years and 8 months apart. So that was a really hard season, and at that time I was going through similar. So I was had one child, desperate for a second, didn't know what I'd finished my PhD, but didn't know what the next kind of thing would be in terms of, I was doing kind of casual lecturing down at the uni, but also doing more ministry at church and kind of thinking maybe this is the next step. I ended up in a job interview having had an embryo transferred that ended up miscarrying for Gymea High School SRE. And I was in the job interview not knowing if the baby was going to take or not, but I'm like, well, I don't know. So I'm in the job interview, and I said, look, knowing that was number 5 of 4 that had already miscarried, I'm like, well, the chances of us having another baby are actually quite slim, which you're not allowed to ask in an interview. They didn't ask in an interview, but I volunteered, which was a factual statement at the time. God, again, is hilarious. And the next cycle we had 3 months later, I did fall pregnant. So I was at Gymea High teaching scripture about 4 months into the job, and fell pregnant and was going to be due the next February. So I remember being pregnant with Oliver, and missionaries came to our church. And I remember saying to them, because they were doing things like, I think they were going to do some university teaching at university kind of as their cover story to get in the country. And I remember sitting down with them, pregnant with my second, and saying, oh, I'm an academic. One day in the long distant future, maybe this kind of dream that my husband and I have had since he tried to pick me up at a conference and I didn't get what he was talking about, of being missionaries. I'm like, we wanted to do it and God said no. And I don't think it'll ever happen. And it's certainly, here I'm gesturing to my big belly, not going to happen anytime soon. Little did I know that when Oliver was 7 months old, we would go and live in Wuhan, China. So that's the long way of how we ended up in Wuhan, China. Which was my PhD supervisor, who was the head of the whole of humanities at Wollongong Uni, had a partnership with Wuhan University back when no one knew what Wuhan was, right? What is Wuhan? I'm like, I had to Google it. Oh, it turns out there's 15 million people there or whatever, but no one had ever heard of it. But she had, she'd got funding for a teaching exchange because this is right at the tail end of good relationship between Australia and China. Things started getting frosty while we were there, and it's certainly not great now. But this is so she's talking to me about this in 2014. And so early 2014, it must be mid 2014 because I was pregnant. She's like, do you want to go first semester 2015? And I'm like, well, I have news for you. And she knew we'd struggled to have children. And so she was like, oh, that's fine, great news, you're having a baby. And, we know that was really hard for you. And I said, look, he might be a super easy baby. And if he is, maybe we could go second semester. And God is very kind. Some people have challenges to have children. Some people have challenges with their children. Part of one of the reasons we can't conceive naturally is hormonal. And so I can't feed. So I bottle fed my kids, and there was a lot of guilt in that. But God is nice in that I also got to sleep because my bottle fed boys had full bellies and slept really well. Right. And David could do one of the feeds. And so Oliver was quite easy as a baby. He's quirky now. He's a quirky fella, but but he's not a hard kid at all. They're both beautiful boys, and it was enough that we could say, all right, David will take leave from his job. We'll go for 3 months, and we'll go and live in China for 3 months. And so that was the plan. And so it was the academic work that got me into the country. And I had no idea. We Googled a church and found there was, because we didn't know even what does church look like in China? Like, how does that work? So we kind of found there was a church called Wuhan International Christian Fellowship. So we kind of knew there was one somewhere in the city. It was about a 40-minute bus ride from where we live, but that was but that was the one. And so we rock up in the country. I knew how to say hello, which is ni hao, but I didn't even know how to say goodbye. Oh. So I thought that the doorman on our building was rude for about a week because I would walk past and go, bye. And then I realised, no, I'm the rude one because he can't speak English and I'm saying goodbye to him every day. And so I had to write at our front door, Jenn, but I wrote it phonetically, not even in pinyin is the when you see Chinese characters with English words underneath, so a bit of a pronunciation guide. But those pinyin letters aren't pronounced in the same way we would pronounce those letters. And so I didn't even write it in pinyin. I wrote it phonetically for me to be able, like Sai, S-I-G-H, Sai, G-E-A-N, Jenn, just so I could kind of get it in my head. And I had it at my front door just so I could say goodbye to him because I knew how to say hello and I knew how to say goodbye. And that was all we had when we arrived in China. My students, obviously, could speak English. Otherwise, it would be a very short class. So we rock up. We know one person in the city. We've Googled a church and we're living it on campus with our 4-year-old and our 7-month-old. And God went ahead of us and did amazing things. So there was a woman in my faculty who lived nearby who had accidentally posted a photo from church. she didn't mean to post it on social media. She meant to post it to a closed group. And it was a photo out. The church that we went to had a big cross. And so it just so happened that she'd posted that, and my boss Frank, who I knew from, he'd spent some time in Australia, we did our PhDs at the same time. Frank, my boss, went, "Oh, Helen goes to that church. Helen can take you to church. Helen can show you around." And so because Helen had accidentally posted a photo of the church, Frank knew when I said, "Oh, look, we're interested in checking out this church. It's on the other side of the city. We don't really know how to get there." He's like, "Oh, you got to meet Helen. Helen will take you." And so she kind of introduced us to this amazing church where the minister was working in between the gaps. Now, I don't know anything about this service now, and I presume things have gotten a lot harder since it's 2015. So we're talking 9 years, and things have gotten harder for Christians in the interim. But he found this way that you could have a church that allowed Chinese people and Westerners, or foreigners, they call you Waigaran, foreigners to go worship together, which is technically illegal in China. So there's underground churches where they're unregistered, and they usually meet in like hotel lobbies or hotel conference rooms or whatever. There's international churches. So the underground churches are Chinese people only. International churches are foreigners only. But our minister found a way to say this was an English language service because the whole service was in English. Right. But Chinese people would come. The government didn't care because it's an English language service, except that the sermons were interpreted back into Wuhan dialect, I think it was Wuhan dialect, one sentence at a time. So the Chinese people could learn alongside Westerners. It's one of the really like remarkably rare. And it just so happens that Helen, who'd accidentally posted a photo, had shared that, and Frank put us in contact with her, which is absolutely amazing. And that was in the first week of us being in China. He just put Helen in our path. Yeah. So
what was the rest of the adaptation to China, like living in China, like?
Hard.
Was it hard? Yeah.
So hard. And you know how
especially if you can't speak the language, and I feel like it's a hard language to learn.
It's not easy. Okay, so here's me. I would go to the shops, and now it's super common to have to buy a bag here, like buy a plastic bag. But that's only come in the last 5 years in Australia. You just get a bag. They give you a bag. I'd go to the shops and I'd have all this stuff, and I'm like, how do I get a bag? What I didn't realise is every time... next step was I found a phrase book, and I learnt the phrase "Ke ge wo yiga daitsma," "Ke ge wo yiga daitsma," and I practiced that. Can you please give me a bag? Right? Ke ge wo yiga daitsma. Ke ge wo yiga daitsma. Can you give me a one bag, please? And over and over and over again. Finally, I get to the shop. I'm like, I can. It's my time to shine. I can see my "you get where you get dates, mama." And so I get there, and I can't get the sentence out quickly enough for her to give me a bag. I'm like, oh, I've tried so hard on this sentence. Finally, I realise, and this might be over the course of a couple of weeks, she's saying to me every time, dates, which is bag. Every time I go there, she's offering me a bag, and I'm like, because you got to pay your 10 cents for a bag. And I'm an idiot and not paying her for the bag, so I'm not getting a bag. So she's trying to help me, and here I am. And it gave me this amazing appreciation for what it must be like for people, who come to Australia and don't have English. I got it. I'm like, yeah, it's hard. And then I had even more understanding for what it must be like when you are fleeing as a refugee. Because I knew my home still existed. I knew the Shire was waiting for me. I knew the first time we went was going to be for 12 weeks, and then we ended up going back for a whole year after that. So it was about 18 months spread over, something like that. And every time I felt homesick, I knew my home still existed. I knew it wasn't destroyed. I knew it was safe. I knew I can go back, and I will go back one day. But to imagine the trauma of not knowing the language, not knowing the culture, not knowing how to get a bag at the shops, and then you can't go home again. I was like, it gave me. So I wrote a couple of articles for the university about there was a big European migration boat people issue around about that time, and I looked at a story called The Boat, which is about a Vietnamese refugee on a boat coming out to Australia. It's a short story by Nam Lee, and I kind of started getting interested in that at that time because I'm like, I get it a little bit, not fully, but I got it. Living in China was hard. My son Ollie was blonde, and I had the same conversation with people over and over again. So this is, by the end, my Chinese got to the point where they would say, 2 boys, and I would say, yep, 2 boys. They're like, both boys? I'm like, yep, both boys. That one too? Yep, that one too. Both yours? Yes. He's blonde? Yep. And then I couldn't kind of explain, because I naturally dark hair, my husband has dark hair. They couldn't understand because everyone in China has dark hair.
Yeah.
How could 2 dark-haired people have a blonde child? And so I tried with my broken Chinese to explain when my husband was a child, he had blonde hair, except tense is really hard in China, and it came out, my husband has many other blonde-haired children, which is not what I wanted to say. So eventually I just went, David's, there's a word for, because family order really matters. So there's a word for older sister and a different word for younger sister. Same with older brother and younger brother. And so David has an older sister and a younger sister. I could say his Jie, his Meme have this color hair. And so I'm like, maybe that will make sense to you because I don't want to make it look like my husband has a harem of children back in Australia. Max, who is 4, people would take photos because in Wuhan there weren't that many foreigners. There's some, but I could walk the whole length of my university. My university was huge. It had a mountain in the middle of it. yeah, it's huge. And so I could walk the whole length of my university and not see another foreign face. Very few like foreign teachers. And it's weird that I say the word foreign because in the Australian context, I'm just very aware of. But in China, that's you are foreign. You are Chinese or not Chinese. You are so foreign is just the word. It's descriptive, but I'm aware that that's a weird thing to say. And my husband would have people say, "You're the first foreigner I've ever met." When he'd wander around the city, but it also worked in our favour because he would, push Ollie around in a pram. Max would be with him as well, and people would come up to him, and if they could speak a little bit of English, he would farm them into my Bible study. It was this amazing thing. And so he's like, "Oh, are you studying English? Or you speak?" My wife's a lecturer in so even the name of the faculty I work for was the School of Foreign Languages. Like she's a lecturer in English in the School of Foreign Languages. She's got a Bible reading group. Do you want to come? And so people who wanted to probably, I want to meet the foreigner and spend more time with the foreign babies, David would farm them into our Bible study, which is remarkable. So that was amazing. But poor Max, people would want to take photos of him and he got sick of it. And so we ended up letting him carry a lightsaber, which was a stick, but to kind of feel a bit safe because people would poke him. They want to it's just getting reactions out of kids is a super normal thing.
Oh, okay.
Like that just, it's just, I don't know why. Similarly with Oliver, the first food he ate was a chocolate that, because nanas, older women and older people carry wrapped lollies to give to kids. It's just, how weird would that be in Aussie? Like an old person comes up to you, have a lolly, like you're like stalker or,
I've experienced that though.
People have given you a lolly?
Yeah. Not giving me a lot, but offered it.
That's right. And so, it's super common, but we had our backs turned, probably dealing with Max. Then we turn around and Oliver's got chocolate all over his face.
What is happening?
Someone's just shoved a chocolate in his mouth while we weren't looking. So culturally, I'm very aware. There's probably someone on a Chinese podcast going, I met this foreigner in Wuhan once and she, she broke all these rules. Like I want to flag that I probably did so many just uncouth things as a Westerner living in China. So it was very tricky. And I noticed the difference the day I came back from China. I was staying with my mum. I came back a couple of weeks early. because my friends had had a family tragedy and I wanted to see my friend. And as soon as I found out, I booked a plane and I'm like, I've got to see her. And I was able to surprise her, actually. She wasn't expecting me back in the country. And that was really special that I could do that. But I was back and staying with my parents for a couple of weeks on my own with Ollie. And David was wrapping up things in China. And I remember we were going to – this is a good idea – surprise your 90-year-old grandfather with being back in the country. But he was fine, but he wasn't expecting me. And so he lives in Bondi Junction and my mum is in Southo. And so I remember we're about to get the train up to visit Papa in Bondi Junction and I ordered a coffee on the way and I went to the coffee shop at Southo and I ordered and I paid and it was all in English and it took no energy. And I still remember holding that coffee and going – wow, that was easy. And that's when it hit me how hard absolutely everything was every day, doing it in a different culture, in a different language. Even like money and counting or ordering a coffee. Like, I can't remember how you order a coffee anymore, but I do know that if you want a bubble tea, you call it len chu lai cha, which someone who speaks Chinese will be like, oh, Jen, your tone is terrible. I'm like, I know. It's been a while. Like, having to know the Chinese name for everything, even to order a coffee. Like I know coffee has a different name too, but I can't remember. Even at Starbucks, which the best coffee in Wuhan, this is how sad things are, is at Starbucks. That was your best option. So China was hard, but God was very kind in that he kept putting Christians in my path. So a girl from the university, she volunteered to help us. Max needed to have had to prove he wasn't full of foreign diseases for him to go to preschool. Like he had to go to a hospital and he had to have a blood draw. He's 4 and it was just so traumatic. But she helped us get to the hospital and the hospital was near where that church was. And so I said to Max, just to kind of calm him down, oh, this is not far from our church, Max. And she's in the front of the taxi. Davina was her English. Everyone has an English name and a Chinese name. So her English name was Davina. And she turns around, she's like, are you a Christian? I'm like, yeah. She's like, so am I. Oh. And it was awesome. I got to disciple her and a friend of hers, Grace. And I wouldn't, God just put her in our path. Another girl was doing her PhD in the faculty and wanted to get to know the foreigner because she was thinking of maybe doing some time in America or Australia. She wanted to know what it was like. So she takes me out for lunch one day. She just comes up to me, I want to take you out for lunch. I'm like, all right, free lunch. And I'm all for a free lunch. It wasn't grilled burgers, so it was very sad. No dill mayo in Wuhan and weird food in Wuhan, but we could talk about that. I did eat at a cafe that I found out later the English name for it was Dog Meat Cafe. So there you go, moving on. She didn't take me there. And I was talking about how my husband would volunteer to go to this place. I'll be deliberately vague here. Where people would speak English to other people, but the people who would run it had deliberately set it up so that Christians could go and as they're practicing English with locals, they could try to have God conversations. And that had been running for 20 years in the city. And it just so happened to be a 2-kilometre walk from our house. So that, that we happened, and we didn't have a car. And so that he could go at nights when the kids were in bed, and that became his ministry, is chatting to people in English. And so anyway, I'm sharing this and the name of the place. My husband spent some time at this cafe, maybe you've heard of it. And she knew it was run by Christians. She knew it was like bit of sneaky mission and and she's like, hey, you a Christian, so am I. And it's so amazing that we enter a country, we know one person, we know one word, and God puts a church and people in our paths for us to do ministry with. It was absolutely amazing. And it was entirely, I did nothing to make that happen, God. I contribute nothing but my weakness. I literally am weak. I can't even ask for a bag at the shops. I can't even say goodbye to the doorman. And yet in my weakness, you're still able to use me. It was pretty remarkable.
I was about to ask you, what do you think is the enduring feeling coming back from China, and then I think you just answered it then anyway.
Yeah, that and this is something I actually I think I've lost a bit, but my friend who had the family tragedy, her son was sick, and before we went back for the year-long stint, I saw him for the last time. He was in hospital, and we were praying with him, and I just said, I'm not going to see you. I'm going to China. He's like, oh, yeah, I heard about that. I'm like, yeah. And we all prayed various things by his bedside, and I'll never forget, among the other things he prayed for us going to China, and he prayed that we would be bold and that we would serve well. And this is a young kid who was sick. And I go, there's a boy back home who prayed that I will take opportunities. I've got a year, I'm going to take every opportunity. And so that, that knowing that there was an urgency that I don't have, that I miss, in that, it's a city of 17 million people, right? I ran into someone, I'm going to be bold for the gospel, because number one, this is what we could do, because it's called Marketplace Mission. I had friends who did this similarly in Belgium, but now they're on staff at their church. But they just started, they were working in the country, and then by working in the country, they were on fire Christians in the country, and that was kind of their thing. And so similarly, we weren't with an agency. We had our cover story was our story. It wasn't a cover story. We went because I was on exchange from Wollongong University to teach English literature. I ended up teaching a whole bunch of other stuff. I had a lot of fun. I also taught Australian culture through Australian film. It was really fun. Did not show the castle because that's too hard basket. But I did show the dish, which is actually my favourite of which they also made. Oh, yeah. So, and showed a whole bunch of other. So our story was a real story. I was there as an academic. This is the only time actually I've had a full-time academic gig, was in Wuhan. Can't get a full-time academic gig in Australia. But Wuhan would have me, probably not now. But I knew it was only a year. I knew I didn't have an agency that I had to protect because there was no agency. I knew the punishment, if I was found out, would be, we'll send you back to Australia. So I quite like Australia, and so all of those things gave us a boldness and an urgency that, not that I took every opportunity, of course, but certainly more on mission in that kind of 18 months than even someone who is in vocational ministry now. I don't feel I have that same on mission urgency. Like, I have friends who I've met as my eldest is in year 7 now, and I have friends who, I'm getting alongside and they're on a faith journey, but it's, are walking very slowly over the course of, all of primary school with these friends whose kids go to school with my son. And so it's not the same. And I remember going to another cafe. My mum and I go to a lot of cafes, and going to Oliver Brown. I love Oliver Brown at Miranda with the big tree there. Lisa Fox, shout out to Lisa Fox. When we worked together, she'd always run into me at Oliver Brown. She's like, "You working?" I'm like, "Yeah, the tree's nice, isn't it?" And so God bless her. And then when I left working with Generate, Lisa gave me a voucher to Oliver Brown, because she knew that was one of my stomping grounds. So funny. Love you, Lisa. And I was there, and a guy served us our coffee, and he had a cross tattoo. And I'd only been back for a week or whatever. I was still living with my parents. And I started talking to him about his cross and talking about, do you go to church? Oh, down the road at St. Luke's. I know the guy there. I used to babysit his sister. True story. And so, I was still in that mindset. And my mum, who is on a faith journey of her own, but on a journey, was mortified, right? Because I was just out there, and I hadn't been, and so it is amazing that, having been back since 2017, I think it did change me, but I also think I've kind of slipped back into a bit of an Aussie, she'll be right, slowly kind of mindset. Yeah.
So it made you bolder, but then You're saying like, but then being in somewhere where you're speaking the same language and all those kind of things. Yeah.
I think you have more time.
Oh, okay. That's true.
You know, like I knew I only had the year. And I knew I might run into this person and never see them again. So, you know, what have I got to lose?
Right.
Whereas, and I get it because you don't want to, it's so hard. It's complex. These are people and you want to do life with them and walk alongside where they're at in their faith journey if you're wanting to walk with them towards Christ. And I have some friends who are on those journeys. But I think there's other, you know, maybe I think, oh, I've got more. There's no deadline, you know, and so I think I maybe then am not taking some of the risks that I probably did in China. I think we think, and this is what I talked about last time as well, you know, we think we've got 80 plus years.
Yeah.
And I might. My dad's in a nursing home. And he has dementia, but he's about to turn 80. Like modern medicine has kept that man alive. He's got a pacemaker. He's got an artificial heart valve. He is like, you know, and you go, it's not for lack of trying, Dad, but you're still going. He's turning 80 next month. And you go, you know, like, okay, 80. And then there's my granddad, I think I talked about, who's about to turn 98. But then on the flip side, there's people in my family. We've had some tragedy in my family and a very close cousin of mine, you know, was taken from us very quickly and suddenly at 41, or not even 41. He hadn't quite, it was just before his birthday. And so there's no guarantees. And I'm trying to work out then, and I like hypercritical, right? Am I taking enough chances? Am I doing enough? This is someone who works 4 days a week in gospel ministry as well.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah.
But is that what kind of move you towards working in some form of ministry after that?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'd already had that F6 freeway moment before going to Wuhan when I was like, I want to teach God's word. But I think coming back to Australia, I did actually have an opportunity, Wollongong Uni, you got to love the casualisation of universities. Wollongong Uni offered me a job that I'd had 2 years previously before China, but with less pay and without the title of being the coordinator of the subject. And I went, but you offered me a better job before I had this 2 years experience and now you're offering me something less. And they're like, oh, that's the policy now. And I went, oh, you'll find someone else to teach that subject.
It's a sign from God.
Yeah, I just went, okay, I'm done with you. And so that was the last time I taught at Wollongong Uni. I was supposed to teach in 2017, and I'd actually written the whole subject outline and I'd chosen all the books. But when I found out what the contract was, I went, no, I don't need this. And I think that was the final confirmation. At the same time, I was offered my first. Oh, no, it's not true. I'd done Gymea High. But that year I was offered 2 SRE roles. I was coordinating primary school for my church and teaching at my former high school, Jenn High School. And so God kept pushing me into SRE ministry. And apart from the last 2 years where I was children's minister at my church, I've been in SRE, even that was SRE ministry because I was SRE coordinating. I've been in SRE ministry ever since. So God's kind of kept opening doors, you know, teach at this school, coordinate for Generate, coordinate the diocese for Youth Works, and now I'm working with Christian SRE as well. So yeah, that's the space where God keeps putting me.
Wow.
Yeah.
One question, because you've mentioned Oliver and Max a lot. Like this is a question we ask all the parents that come on the podcast. What has being a parent taught you, or what has God taught you through being a parent? I think your journey is a little bit different to mine, for example.
Yeah.
As you shared before, like IVF and
yeah.
things like that.
Yeah. I think the first thing God taught me was he took away my idol of being a parent. And I very much remember doing business with God, and I do see that he grew me to a point of maturity, you know, as the Bible says, through trials. And I think a lot of that happened through that process of IVF because I had to, you know, really do business with God and be like, if you never give me a child, or if after Max, if you never give me another child, will I still serve you? You know, am I in this for what I can get out of you in this life? Or am I in this because you are God and you have sent your son and he is the ruler, he's going to rule and reign forevermore, and he has bought and paid for me and I live in service of him. Am I in it for that, or am I in it because I want a quid pro quo, God? You know, like I want you to answer my prayer and give me kids when I want them, you know. If you never answer my prayer the way I want you to, will I still trust that you are sovereign and good? And I see that pattern of having seasons in my life where it feels like God, subjectively from my perspective, either it feels like God is not in control of this situation, or if God is in control, God is not doing a good thing in this situation. Like it's hard to feel that God is good after miscarriage number 5, you know, and let's not talk about the thousands of dollars that we kind of went through. Which is a lot, you know. I remember trying to bribe God before the first IVF cycle and be like, okay, God, it's going to be $8,000 or whatever it was, which actually sounds ridiculously cheap for the first cycle with Max. And I went, fall pregnant this month? Guess what? I'll give it all to you. You know, like, you know, those kind of deals.
Yeah, like, hey, there's something in it for you too.
Come on, God. God, this is a win-win. No IVF for me. $8,000 for you. You know?
Don't spend it all at once.
That's terrible. But I do remember, you know, that kind of bargaining with God. And so that journey, yeah, if it revealed my heart, you know, one of the idols of my heart was two kids, regardless of gender, who were close in age, because I wanted to undo what I thought was a failure of my parents, which is having us far apart. And as the age gap got bigger, I, you know, started getting more and more anxious. God is so kind in that you wouldn't know it's 3 years, 8 months. They play together remarkably well. We're about to go over that hump where one is just turned 13 and so we'll see what that gap is like when one is well and truly a teenager and one isn't. But really they've met in the middle, which is really beautiful in that they watch the same TV shows in this season. You know, I might watch this in a couple of years' time and go, remember that time when they liked each other? They watch the same TV shows and they read the same books and they both, you know, they play the same computer games. And, you know, that gap is arbitrary in terms of we've encouraged them to, and I actually think lockdown was really beautiful because they only had each other. And I really saw their relationship flourish in that time when they only had each other. Not that they always get along. Oliver is off the charts extroverted and Max is, people don't believe me, but I am not extroverted. This takes a lot of energy and I need a lot of let's just sit in a corner and read to recover from this. And Max is so much like me. Like he's out there when he's at youth group and when he's at church, but you know, he'd be very happy just in his room playing with his Lego alone if he could. And so that's kind of a bit of a challenge to manage the extrovert and the introvert. But yeah, certainly God revealing my heart was, you know, what is the idol for you? Are you going to let this idol get in the way of worshipping me? And thankfully, you know, when I did business with God and realised, okay, I'm going to trust that you are both sovereign and good, even if some days it might not feel like you're sovereign. How did this happen if you're sovereign, if you're in control? Or how are you good? And that's kind of, you know, there are lots of, that is a recurring, really that's what faith feels like to me, is trusting in God's good sovereignty in a day that may not feel like one of those things is true. Yeah. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, I was just thinking about it, to be honest. Yeah, I think that's, I think like in terms of, you know, as you know, I'm a parent, it's a similar thing. Even though like we have different stories, it's like they rely on you. So, but what I think God's really teaching you, so you need to rely on Him.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that their faith journey is going to be so different to mine.
Same.
You know? Yeah, like, and I think a lot of my friends are second generation Christians where we didn't grow up in Bible reading Christian households. So on one hand, like I hear what they come out with in terms of their biblical knowledge, and my 9-year-old, you know, knows so much. His knowledge of the Old Testament is so much better than what mine was as maybe even like a 29-year-old, you know, like he gets it. They were so cute. We were walking the dog the other day and one of them was asking a question about what's the difference between the Exodus and the exile. And so we're walking the dog and I'm like, all right, let's talk about some Old Testament narrative. And but it was just really, you know, so on one hand, that's amazing. But then on the other hand, they will still be saved by God's grace and election, you know. And the fact that we've taught them the Bible, they've grown up in church, will not be what saves them. It will be God's calling them and God making them alive in Christ through his Spirit. That is what will save them. And so that, again, we are entirely powerless in that. There are wise things that we can do to model, to proclaim, you know, the Deuteronomy passage about I really felt the Deuteronomy passage walking the dog that day, you know, talk about them as you go about your business, you know, like I'm like, oh, how cool is this? I didn't go, hey boys, let's do a lesson on the difference between the Exodus and the exile. Like one of them wanted to bring it up because I think they were talking about it at kids' church. And so you do those things, but your children will be saved by God's kindness. And so that's a trust, that's a faith, you pray and hope, but ultimately they're his, aren't they? It's up to him. So I think we as parents, we like to feel a level of control, which is a right thing, you know, want to get you out to school at the right time and give you the right food and do the right extracurriculars and whatever. But there is a real surrender that we have to have when it comes to the spiritual life of our children. Beyond, like I said, the wise things to do, being an authentic Christian, talking about your faith with your kids, reading the word with your kids, which my husband is much better at than me in terms of if he's home at bedtime, he's good. His bedtime routine always has the Bible in it. My bedtime routine is, because he's a shift worker and I might have been alone for 3 days and I'm like, yeah, what are we up to in Judges? Yes, okay, we're working through. Well, of course we're reading Judges. You know why we're reading Judges? Because I'm like, hey boys, there's Ehud. He gets stabbed on the toilet. No, Eglon. Ehud and Eglon. You know, like, yeah you got to read Judges with your kids. Yeah. The jawbone, we got to Samson and the jawbone the other day. Yeah, like, whoa. Yeah, you got to. I've got young boys. Yeah, exactly. Actually, shout out to the book. This my son Max went through a phase. And I think it was just, he was kind of growing into owned faith, but he kind of went through that I'm not a Christian kind of phase for a little bit. The Bible's boring. And so we got the book Weird, Crude, Funny and Nude by David French, I think it is, where he talks through all of the weird, crude, funny and nude passages. So he talks about Mark running away naked, potentially Mark. We don't know. Young boy in the Gospel of Mark that we think is Mark running away naked. It talks about the poo pies that what is it? Ezekiel has to make. Does it have to be human poo?
I think someone threw a poo pie in here.
Yes, a poo pie. They were reenacting.
No, we can't see it, which is good.
Yeah, and so you do all those things, but so that was helpful for Max because it helped him to be like, oh, the Bible is fun. You know, I'm like, the Bible is great. But still, owning faith will be on him, you know, and he's great. I think he was really struggling. So when he was in year 5, I was the children's minister at our church, and he found that really hard because he takes it, if I don't choose him, he takes it personally, and I'm like, I can't choose you first for every game all the time. He's like, oh, you know, I'm like, it's not personal, mate. I'm trying to be, whereas Ollie doesn't, well, it is, but yeah. But Ollie is like water off a duck's back. He didn't care. Yeah. So Max, it really graded him. And so I think he found that year particularly hard. Then the next year, our youth group at Janelli starts in year 6. And I think having that space for me and doing a bit more and going to youth church service was helpful for him. Yeah.
I think though, even coming back from a non-Christian family, like you want to make sure they know. I think, and I got to credit Fee Francesconi for saying this to me a few weeks ago, of that, because it was a story about, I was telling her a story about my son Leo, who had just an interesting interaction with his teacher, who was just prior to scripture. He said something that wasn't very helpful for people going to Protestant scripture and stuff. Like, oh yeah, what's that? Anyway, I won't tell the story, but it was about Noah, and we went and just said like, let's have a look in the Bible, and then we went to the Bible and I think it's Genesis 8. I mean, then he was like, yeah, but I think, I don't know, maybe it's different. I can't speak for anyone who grew up in a Christian home, but I think Fee was like, yeah, but because you didn't grow up with that, you want to make sure he grew up with that. Yeah. And we're talking even on the Shockazoo about resilient disciples at the moment, and what that requires to be a resilient disciple. And it's one of the top priorities is obviously a intimate relationship with Jesus. And I think that helps form we're using a book called Faith for Exiles, which is talking about it's really important to shape even young people's identity that early with the Bible. And it helps really with them being resilient disciples as they grow older. Yeah. So I don't say that what you're saying is wrong, because it is up to God. But just I suppose an encouragement that I've gained from that is going, but I didn't have this, so I want to make sure that you do have this. And you can see it. You can see it impact them differently, even in their relationships that they have with people their own age. Anyway, that was just a thought on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a both and the thing that our kids have, the challenge that our kids will have that I don't think I had too much. I mean, I had one teacher, she made me do my personal interest project for Society and Culture on how the church was wrong about homosexuality, which is pretty out there considering this was the year 2000 I was doing that. But she was, she had decided Jenn has been brainwashed by this church that she goes to, so I want to encourage her to, and she, it wasn't how the church is wrong, but she wanted me to investigate that as, for my HSC. But that was the only teacher who kind of put pressure on me opposed to my identity as a Christian. I was pretty out there as a Christian in the school. I remember quoting the Timothy verse about physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things, because I hated PE. and I love this. Like every once in a while, When I run very slowly and mostly downhill. Uphill.
How do you get back?
Yeah, walk back up the hill. But every once in a while, my running path will take me past Janelli High School, and I just laugh at 41 that I'll gladly, in my own time, sometimes not as much as I should, run past the school that I refused so much to do. I hated PE. I got out of PE any way, shape or form I could. I was like, once I left my PE uniform in the deputy's office, because God bless him, lovely Christian man, he just let you leave stuff in his office and he just wouldn't ever question it, right? And so I left my uniform in there for a good couple of months and forgot about it. And he didn't question that it was there. My runners and everything was just all in his office, and somehow I could get out of PE. But I was out there as a Christian at the school, and it wasn't, I didn't feel any, apart from that one teacher. Whereas it's hard in a public school. And potentially, I don't know, it could be in Christian schools too, having not had experience in a Christian school, but particularly hard. And I think this is where preparing our kids to have that robust, resilient faith is going to be helpful, because they're going to have to give an answer, for the reason of the hope that they have, with gentleness and respect, as God's word says. But they'll have to do it so much younger. Whereas really I felt that friction maybe at uni, like I was talking about. But even then, even when I was at uni, it was nowhere near as hard as it would be to be a public Christian. I genuinely think if I was still teaching at the university now and I did my spiel about being a Christian, I wonder if I'd have more than one student. You know, I only had one the whole time who didn't like me and was out to get me. Would I have, you know, more than that just by virtue of mentioning the fact that I'm a Christian? Would that be triggering to someone in my tutes? I don't know.
Jen, we're running out of time.
Yeah, what a surprise! Jenn Phillips comes on and talks forever.
So, do you want to come back for part 3, or do you want to wrap this up? That's what I was going to ask you.
You know what I haven't talked about much?
What?
How great Scripture is.
Oh.
Oops.
Oops, you talked about it.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
But how you like doing it?
Well, just get. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this is my ministry, and I've talked about everything. My current ministry. Look, let's let the viewers decide.
We're gonna put a poll.
I know you've had quite a number of people have watched your episode on YouTube for sure.
Oh, that's because Bim Tillhart's plugged it for me.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
He's got a network, that guy.
He's really great. Every time I put an article out there, he's like my hype man. I'm like, yay! Thanks, Tim. Love your work, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
He'll be listening. He'll be like, oh, Jen, you talked about grilled burgers.
Yeah, totally. He will be listening.
Yeah,
for sure,
no,
as well.
he's hopefully one or two others. Like my friend, he said I'm not off-putting. Hopefully he'll come back. Oh, also, can I shout out to my friend Adam? So my friend Adam has a podcast, and and we're doing a podcast trade. So I gave him the first episode, and then when I saw him again, he's like, yeah, I made it half an hour in. And I'm like, oh, Adam, so like once I started saying Jesus, did you press stop? Because we have a bit of a back and forth. He's my trainer.
Okay.
And so we joke that his religion is footy, and I'm like, no, nothing about footy, but I can talk to you lots about Jesus. So so anyway, so this is my trade. Shout out to Adam and his podcast.
What's his podcast called?
Oh, we could get it out there. It sounds a bit dodge. It's not. We can always cut this out.
Okay.
No. His podcast is about it's called Run Naked, but it's not about, like I said, sounds dodge. It's not about running naked.
Based on Mark.
Just that one verse.
Yeah.
I should totally share that verse with him. I'm totally going to do that. And so Adam has got an amazing story. He got into health and shed something like 60 kilos. But he also along that journey stopped drinking. So he was quite a social drinker and was drinking quite a lot. And so now his podcast is about having kind of the health side and no alcohol lifestyle, bringing those together. So, and how it kind of not just, it's a bit like what the Bible says. So I haven't talked to Adam about this, that you take off and you put on, don't you? You don't just leave a vacuum. You take off sin and you put on the
robe of Christ.
The robe of Christ. And so, they're saying, what does an alcohol-free lifestyle look like, and can you fill that with things like health and running and things like that? So, yes. So we're doing a podcast trade.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's my real reason for coming on.
Imagine how many subscribers he's going to get after this.
Oh, yeah. Go to the Run Naked podcast.
So is that why you only run every so often?
Because it gets too cold?
No, you're running naked.
Yeah, winter doesn't work for me.
You can only do it at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's ask you. I mean, we have missed out a few things,
That's all right.
but I want to ask the final question. What do you know now as a Christian? You've stated your age a number of times.
Don't be embarrassed for me.
Oh, I'm not at all.
Okay.
I'm never embarrassed when someone asks me how old I am. Or anyway, I don't know why other people do. Anyway, what do you know now that you wish your younger Christian self knew?
Yeah. It's almost like last night I was trying to be my older self to myself last night. So I was in God's word. I think I told you yesterday I took an Elijah nap.
Yeah, because you were a big grumpy.
I was a bit grumpy yesterday. It wasn't in the. It was a down day, and I do have, like I've said with mental health, they're just days when my brain just misfires. And yesterday was just a day where everything was just way too hard. But I also kind of feel, if you look up 1 Kings 19, Elijah's just like defeated he did the God face off, the prophets of Baal, right? And that's a huge victory. And you go, why are you not on a high? But then the next verse is Jezebel's like, yeah, I'm going to kill you, And I get it. Elijah feels like he is the only one in all of God's people. And you got to realize it's only God's people at this point. We're not giving the good news to the nations yet. The nations aren't engrafted in. So he's thinking, I'm the one person left flying the flag for Yahweh. So no wonder he goes under the juniper tree and has a bit of a cry and a nap, and God visits him, and the angel of the Lord visits him and gives him some nice cakes and helps him have a nap. And but I have those moments where I feel like and this is the pep talk, right? So many people need the gospel. So many people are lost. So many people don't know of God's great love for them. And so, that's why I'm in ministry, because I'm doing what I can under God to serve him, to share the good news, to glorify his name. I cannot do it apart from his strength, because when I have a day under my strength, I need an Elijah nap, right? I'm down. But so I was kind of meditating on that last night, and then I'm like, what always helps? Go to the end of Revelation, because spoiler alert, Jesus wins. And I think that, what I would say to myself today, what I would say to myself on a down day, what I'd say to myself when I'm younger is that no matter what the ups and downs are, and they're going to be ups and downs, that is just the nature of living in this fallen world, Christ is the victor, that Christ will return in glory. He will be declared King of Kings and Lord of Lords, that he will have his people worshipping him, that we will be brought back into relationship with God. You think of that picture of heaven where we're back dwelling with God like he dwelt with Adam and Eve in the garden. And so what I would say to myself all the way along my journey, and I'm preaching this to me today because I need to hear it as well, and I probably need to hear this every day, is, do not be discouraged, because I think there are times that are highly discouraging, and I've had some pretty hard times of late and in the past, but God is good, God is sovereign, and God has worked all things to the glory of Christ Jesus. And so when you're in doubt, just skip to the last page like you do in a good John le Carré novel and go, oh, Benedict Cumberbatch did it.
No, that's wrong, because he never did.
Sorry. I don't even know if that got recorded. Call back to a bit.
We were talking about spy novels because we thought you might be a spy.
Oh, yeah. That subtext got dropped out. I'm really, Joel got me on the podcast to reveal that I'm a secret spy. Yeah.
But Jesus wins.
To undercut the whole thing. Yeah. And I think I do. I two places I go. I go to the prophets, because I'm like, things are bad, but they're not this bad. They're not, I feel like I'm the only person in Israel bad. And even then God comforts him by saying, it's okay, I've got 7,000. And I looked at that 7,000 number and I went, that was supposed to be a comfort to Elijah. Okay, he's got more. He's got more than 7,000. And so I go to the prophets to remind me that God has been faithful, but people have felt this way before, that I'm not the only one who's felt despair, or that the task is insurmountable. But then you go to Revelation and remind yourself that, in the end, all things, Jesus has called a people of every nation, race and tongue to worship him forever. And so, I think I've got to just keep preaching that to myself all the way along the journey.
Yeah. No, it's important for everyone to hear that, I think. It's really cool. Final words, Braden?
Thanks so much for sharing, Jen.
Yeah.
I always enjoy getting to chat to someone I don't know as well. Getting to hear your story and how God's worked throughout your life and how you've followed him and just kind of seen where it's led. It's really amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate your honesty. Like, there's things where you're like, I'll just be deliberately vague here for whatever reason, which is great. And then also, but you're also very open. And I think, again, that, I don't know if I said that on your last episode, I think that's really helpful for people to be able to hear that. we don't have to be super guarded, even though, yes, this does go out on the internet. But I think...
What?
Oops.
What are we doing this for?
I thought this was just for us.
I thought this was just your blackmail tape. For
No, but like...
The cameras are on?
Yeah, what? It is recording, just so you know, guys. I think, yeah, just for people, I don't know, even when you're talking about your IVF journey, we've had a couple of people be on recently that talked about that, which I didn't know. And I didn't know that about yourself either. And I think, we get to know people better when they just tell us what's really going on.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. So, thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me twice. Potentially 3 to know. I don't know.
No, maybe we'll see. For a bit light on it again.
When you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. Oh, there's Jen.
Jen, you're there hiding, reading a book. Come on.
Or hiding under a juniper tree.
Come out from under the juniper tree.
Stop playing a board game under the juniper tree and then come. But yeah, thank you very much.
No, thank you.
It's been lovely to have you on, and I'm sure we'll see you around. And we'll probably just get you back. Just you can tell us about many other things, scripture especially.
I've got to talk about scripture.
All right,
It's super important.
We'll do that after a week away.
Whenever.
All right,
I'll be there.
all right, no worries. But thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you, everyone that's listening or watching.
Be specific, like my friend.
Yes, that's right. And check out the Run Naked podcast as well. if you're interested in doing that.
Yeah.
Friends of the podcast.
Yeah, friends.
Oh, no.
Friends of friends.
Podcast adjacent.
Yes.
Oh, podcast. Soul Revival podcast adjacent Run Naked podcast. But we'll wrap up the chips and we'll finish with a one-way.
One way.